Peace be with you everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Trevor, very grateful to have you here. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing my top 10 picks for the month of March 2025. So these are going to be the forefront of my rotation, or have been. We just hit the beginning of spring here, March 20th, today's the 21st. And these are the major fragrances that I've been reaching for. A lot of features of lavender, oak moss, vetiver, as well as soapy accords, things of that nature. Mint is also going to be a key player here. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into the list. Many of these are a little bit hard to find or discontinued, so you'll have to forgive me for that, but these are just the ones that have been really appealing to me, and I think some of them are still worth seeking out. So starting off, I do have one honorable mention. So this will be 11 fragrances. We have Patrick from Fragrances of Ireland. This is the go-to St. Paddy's Day fragrance for me, and as you can see from the dent here, I do wear it outside of just that holiday. This basically smells like green iris spring soap, and it's an eau de cologne concentration, but wears quite a bit like an eau de toilette. Get really decent performance out of it. And I think it was made in 1990, so it has more of a 90s vibe than an old school 80s vibe going on with it, despite the oak moss in here. And it's really quite a bright fougere. You could wear this in the summertime, I would say, despite having some heavier notes like the oak moss, and just an absolute steal and one of my favorite cheapies for the springtime. So that is the only honorable mention here. Next, we'll move into the designers, starting off with, again, this one is discontinued. Just recently picked it up, but still available for a decent price. This is Cartier Roadster. Got mine on eBay for about $130, which going rate for some of these designer fragrances like the newer Beau releases, as well as some Tom Fords, are exceeding that level of Chanel's. So I still think this one is worth grabbing if you have a chance. It's basically smells like if a LaCroix sparkling soda did a mint chocolate chip flavored drink. This kind of has this very extremely sparkly, bright, creamy, sweetened up mint vibe going on with it. But it would then be garnished with an actual mint, because there is this extremely photorealistic, beautiful, herbaceous quality to the mint in here, and that sparkly sensation that I get as well. So that's why I somewhat associated it with a fizzy drink like a sparkling soda. Not quite fizzy in terms of the texture, but the overall wearing experience has a sparkle to it, I want to say, and really an absolute stunning fragrance, one of the ones that I've been adoring very much so this March. Next, we have another discontinued designer. This is Gucci Nobile. This kind of goes in the same direction as something like Drakkar Noir, but it has a lot more of a creamy lavender to it. So it's a lot more shaving foam-esque than some of the other renditions of this DNA, like Houbigant à l'Extrême, as well as, like I said, Drakkar Noir. This, in my opinion, is somewhat like if you took shaving foam, mixed it with an old wood forest, maybe some kind of very pre-industrial age, untouched virgin forest. It has just that nobility about it, something about middle-aged or medieval kind of foresty vibes going on. It definitely has this regality to it, I want to say. And I think is one of the best, if not the best, rendition of that Drakkar Noir DNA. This one is a little bit more difficult to find, especially for a good price. I picked this one up off of Mercari for around $200. Hard to say if it's worth that for you, but definitely something that has been a favorite of mine for the springtime. Next, we have a designer that's a little bit more easy to find. This is Guerlain Vetiver, one of the benchmark vetiver fragrances, in my opinion. As you can see from the dent in there, I've been wearing this one quite a bit. It could easily be a springtime signature for me. It's a little bit darker and more nuanced than something like Tom Ford's Gray Vetiver, which is a more bright, sprightly, and maybe summertime leaning. This one has a darkened up kind of earthy tone to it, as well as a subtle tobacco note that gives it a lot more depth. But it dries down into this really creamy, nice, soapy quality, and is just something that I absolutely adore during the springtime, and definitely worth checking this one out. That is Guerlain Vetiver Eau de Toilette. Haven't got my nose on the new Parfum version yet. Okay, next, the last designer, I believe. Then we have a couple of niche coming up. This is going to be Tom Ford's Beau de Jour, and so this is kind of like a classic fougere. Again, you get that shaving foam vibe, but instead of going into a more foresty direction, it gets a brightness from a mint note in here. So It adds this little bit more of a sparkly quality to the Fougere DNA. This one's a lot more old school. In all honesty, I feel like this one, despite being a little bit more oak moss heavy, I think wears a little bit more modernly than this. This definitely has this retro, very, I don't want to say vintage, but it definitely is reminiscent of something that maybe your grandfather would wear. So this isn't going to be everyone's cup of tea, but it's got one of the best lavender notes in my collection, in my opinion, and it just has a beautiful textural feel. A little bit pricey for a designer, but definitely kind of a benchmark Fougere or Barbershop fragrance, especially for what's on the market today. Definitely worth getting your nose on that one. Okay, so we still have quite a few fragrances here. Next, we've got Mousse Illuminee. This, I think, is articulated very well by the name of the fragrance. It reminds me of a tree that's got a lot of moss growing up on it, and it's being hit by the sunlight. It definitely has a little bit more of this creamy textural feel going on underneath of it, while also that rugged aspect of the moss. You definitely get the textural feel of like a moss on top of everything. Very sprightly. It gets a little bit of a lemon lime sensation despite having no citrus notes mentioned in here. There are some white florals that might be contributing to that, but despite being a very green fragrance, which tend to not be that popular, this one is probably one of my most complimented fragrances in this list. And the House of Rogue in general, I think, is a really awesome, I believe, American-based perfume house, and definitely one worth checking out. Get a sample set from them. I'm quite a big fan of many of their offerings. Next, this is my scent of the day. This is Fougere Emeraude, or Emeraude, and so it's like an emerald Fougere. This is unique in the sense that it's a unisex Fougere. It's got some tuberose that makes it very floral in its textural appeal, almost fleshy like flower petals. Lavender is one of the best in my collection, as well as is most of the ingredients from this house, Les Indemodable. This one's not talked about as much as something, say, like Vanille Havane, but this is my absolute, one of my favorites in my entire collection, point blank period, out of all my fragrances. Definitely like a top 5 for me. And definitely this whole house, I think, is worth getting a sample set of. And this one in particular is my favorite that I've tried from them. Next, we have another new one to the collection this year. This is Cologne Officinale from Heeley. And this is kind of like, if you've ever tried Cerruti 1881, is very much like a dry, soapy fragrance. This one, I feel like, is a niche rendition of that DNA, and it takes out some of those urinal cake chords that are reminiscent of some of those older issuing of fragrances, and brightens it up a little bit, makes it a lot more cold, cool, and smooth. Overall, it reminds me of something like if Prada did a Fougere fragrance. Very amazing stuff. I got mine off of Lucky Scent. Couldn't really find this brand at the discounters, but overall the quality is there, and I think I'm not disappointed for paying, I think, maybe like $170 after using a coupon code, which is pretty affordable compared to some of these more like influencer brands that are charging like $200-300 a bottle for their niche fragrances. So definitely worth checking that one out. Next, a classic Green Irish Tweed. Smells like rolling green hills on the countryside. It's got this prominent violet leaf note that gives it this ozonic feel, like the dew growing on the grass, almost like a foggy, a fog overlaying that green rolling hills. It's a little bit more of a green dampened, gray, overcast kind of day, but in a way that's got us just enough warmth and briskness combined. There's a peppermint note that opens up in the beginning here. Like I said, peppermint and mint in general are going to be fragrance notes that I really gravitate towards during this time of the year. And one of the few fragrances that I give a 10 out of 10 in my collection, and a classic. Definitely get your nose on this one. None of the clones have come close to the magic that's in this bottle, and it's one of the newer renditions. Haven't got my nose on vintage batches, but absolutely adore that fragrance. Could easily be a signature of mine, and potentially is my #1 in my whole collection. Next, this one is definitely hard to find, but worth getting your nose on if you can. I probably wouldn't pay more than $300 for it, but Stunning Juice, perfumed by Bertrand Duchefort. This is Enchanted Forest from the Vagabond prints. Don't know why they've discontinued this one. They still have all the rest of their offerings available, and I think they had a new release only maybe like 1 or 2 years ago. So hopefully they do end up bringing this one back. But the scent is in the name, Enchanted Forest. There's definitely this very photorealistic pine forest accord going on in here, very textured in that sense, like a bed of pine needles. But then the enchanted part comes in from blackcurrant and a wine accord that give it this very almost like pink pixie dust quality to it. It reminds me of like a strawberry watermelon bubblegum, but it's not bubblegum childish in terms of its sweetness, but just only the scent profile of that strawberry watermelon vibe going on, coming in from the blackcurrant and the wine over the top of that foresty feel. And it definitely has a little bit more of a cold, brisk Siberian Himalayan style snow dusted forest, but there's a warmth to it as well. So it's definitely, like I said, enchanted in the sense that you'd be somewhere where it like snows on the ground, but you still feel warm in a fairy tale-esque type of setting. Definitely another one of my favorites for the springtime. If you can find one for a decent price, definitely snag it up. And then finally, the last one, again, another discontinued fragrance. Very hard to find, but you can kind of get into the same ballpark with Houbigant Fougere Royale. But this one adds a big dose of clove that I think plays a little bit better into the cooler weather that we get at the beginning of March, and that is Bracken Man from Amouage. Stunning Fougere fragrance. Really sad that this has been discontinued. I had to hunt this one down. I got a decent price for this, I believe, on Mercari. I think I picked it up for right around 300. And like, I wish I would have gotten it for like 250, but all things considered, this is definitely something I'm glad to have in the collection. And another one that I think is one of my favorite Fougeres, right up with some of the rest of them in this list here. And even if you can just get a sample, I think they might still have samples floating around of this out there on the market from like 2 to 5 ml. Definitely worth snagging those up if you can. It's just a really great DNA. And I also hear that there was a clone that came pretty close to this. Haven't gotten my nose on that one yet, but I saw it pop up at places like fragrancebuy.ca. Amouage Bracken, I believe is the name. So let me know if you've tried that clone in the description down below or in the comments section, and what kind of fragrances you've been reaching for as we begin the season of spring officially here on the 20th. And as always, I really appreciate you sticking with me to the end of the video. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.